topics is risk identification. Identifying business risk exposure. First step is the identification of loss exposure. Loss exposure can be identified through the analysis of firm's financial statement, discussion with the manager through the firm, survey of employees, discussion with the insurance agent and risk consultant. It was the first step. There are various methods to identify the loss of exposure. These are property loss exposures, liability losses, losses to human resource, losses from external economic forces. Risk identification and first one here. Property loss exposures. Several valuation method. Book value, market value, pharmacy value, replacement cost, new business income exposure, extra expense coverage. B. Liability losses. Firms faces potential legal liability losses as a relationship with the many parties, including supplier, customers, employees, shareholders, and members of the public. Lawsuit it also may harm firms by damaging their reputations, and they may require expenditure to minimize the cost of this damage. Losses to human resources. Work injury, disability, death, retirement, turnover. Risk identification. Loss from external economic forces, change in the price of input and outputs, large change in the exchange rate between the currency. Number two step of the risk identification, identifying the individual exposure. To analyze the sources and uses of the fund in the present and plan it for the future, such as earning prior of to retirement, medical expenses, personality liability exposure, social security. Risk identification. To step also source and uses of fund, alternative source of income, spouse's income, investment income, medical expenses, vary across countries such as Canada, United Kingdom, rely more on the government provision of the medical services insurance. But for our country is not also like this. Then personal liability exposures, driving an automobile and owning property with the potential hazard. Basic concept from the probability and statistic. Random variable and probability distribution. A random variable is a variable whose outcome is uncertain. For example, suppose a coin to be the flipped and the variable x is defined to be the equal to $1 if the heads appear and minus $1 if tails appear. A probability distribution identifies all the possible outcomes for the random variable and the probability of outcomes. Probability distribution for the coin flips example, positive outcome $1, 0.5 or 50%, minus $1, 0.5 or 50%. Both are equal. Characteristics of the probability distribution. Expected value. The expected value of the probability distribution provides the information about the where the output comes tend to occur on the average. To calculate the expected value, you multiply each possible outcome by its probability and then add up the result. Expected value of the x. This characteristics of the probability distribution. Variance and standard deviation. Variation measures the probable variation in outcomes around the expected value. High variance minus difficult to predict. variance equal summation pi first bracket xi minus mean whole power or whole square. Standard deviation square root of the variance. Standard deviation just root over the variance. Characteristics of probability distribution: sample mean and sample standard deviation, skewness, maximum probable loss and value at the risk. Correlation: evaluating the frequency and severity of losses. Frequency: the frequency of the loss measures the number of the losses in a given period of time. Severity: the severity of the losses measures the magnitude of loss per occurrence. Thank you for listening and watching the video.